Hey cuties, what's up? We're back with some more reactions after dark, and we are of course going to be watching. They said his phone exploded, but there was a hole in his head. Cradle Fun CEO murder, obviously by Dark Asia with Megan. It's been a while since we've done a Megan video, though, of course. Well, Dark Asia specifically, because we did Beauty and the Beast on Friday, a few days ago, right? Still technically a Megan video, just a different channel. I'll be right back with some more Dark Asia with Megan. And I was saying in the Beauty and the Beasts episode that maybe this would be like another Dark Asia week this time around. I don't know. Arguably, it probably should be next month that I'm doing this, but I still might do this next month too. Because there was a Beauty and the Beast episode about the Jersey Devil that I just noticed, like deciding what I was going to watch today, and I was like, oh, I want to do that right now, but then I was like, wait, you know what, I probably should watch that next month when we do horror in July, right? So I was like, oof. So I decided on this one, just looking through what she had. Yep, no tea today, question mark, even though I do have a lot to talk about. I'm just waiting until I have a Stephanie video to talk about it, specifically the fourth/final episode of the current like reality show that she's watching. Whenever she posts that, then I'll talk about any like drama tea stuff. Yeah, I think we can just go ahead and get into it now.
Firefighters force open a bedroom door. It's been locked from the outside. Inside, a man is lying dead on the bed. Burn marks cover parts of his body, and
well, yeah, obviously the implication here is that someone killed this guy, question mark. And, you know, the fire was just an excuse.
And the damage is concentrated near the bed frame and around his head. But the rest of the room is almost completely untouched. Papers are still on the desk, the curtains are intact. It's the eve of Hari Raya Idul Fitri, the holiday marking the end of Ramadan.
Okay, so they set his head on fire and then put it out, question mark, at some point?
Across Malaysia, families are getting ready to celebrate. But in this home, Nazrin Hassan's family won't be celebrating. They will be planning a funeral. This is the case of Nazrin Hassan, one of the most talked about cases in Malaysia's recent history. And I have to say, this one raises more questions than it answers.
I mean, obviously I've never heard of this. Of course, how would I? Though the way that is worded means, as usual with some of these Dark Asia videos, we're not going to know what happens, right? Someone got him and then we don't know who got him.
It's the early hours of June 14th, 2018. In an affluent neighborhood in Petaling Jaya, Malaysia, a security guard notices something wrong. Smoke is rising from a two-story house. He walks closer and finds the homeowner's wife, Samira Muzaffar, standing on the porch. She isn't on the phone. She isn't calling for help. She isn't doing anything. For some reason, none of the members of the household called the emergency services. It was the neighbors who reached out for help. The firefighters arrived to find Samira still standing at the front door.
Is it supposed to be implication that the family are the ones who did it? Question mark.
It was the neighbors who reached out for help. The firefighters arrived to find Samira still standing at the front door. She is completely expressionless. No crying, no wailing, even as her husband is burning in the room above her. There is no emotion at all. The firefighters rush upstairs. Inside the bedroom, they find Nazrin Hassan's body on the bed, with burn marks covering roughly 30% of his body. The room is partially burned, but the pattern doesn't look like that of an accidental fire. The damage is concentrated in specific areas, rather than spreading evenly across the room.
Like, how do you even create a concentrated fire unless the phone thing is true? Question mark?
Flammable items elsewhere are completely untouched. And another questionable detail is that Nazrin's body is just lying on the bed. There was no sign that he tried to escape, no sign that he tried to move at all. It was a very strange scene. What on earth had happened in this room?
Yeah, his head just caught on fire and he just took it. Like who would do that, right?
To understand why this case would go on to grip an entire nation, let's first look into who Nazrin Hassan was. He was the group CEO of Cradle Fund, a government-linked agency.
Cradle? I thought it was like Cradle.
Under Malaysia's Ministry of Finance. Cradle provided grant funding to early-stage technology startups, and over the years, it backed hundreds of companies, including a ride-hailing startup that would eventually become Grab. Within Malaysia's tech community, Nazrin was seen as something rare, a leading figure who genuinely understood entrepreneurship because he had actually lived it. Before running Cradle, he had been a startup founder himself. People who worked with him described him as articulate, thoughtful, and direct. He believed that entrepreneurs weren't just building businesses, they were trying to create something that mattered. He once said that Cradle's job was simply to help as many founders as possible reach commercial success, and that what they did with it after that was up to them. When people showed up for his funeral on June 15th, 2018, the turnout said everything. It was the kind of crowd you expect for a head of state, not
This was a while ago, right? 2018.
someone working behind the scenes at a grand agency. For many people in Malaysia's startup world, Cradle had been the only institution that ever believed their idea.
I assume like if a lot of people did make it after this company helped them, I guess it would make sense.
Nazrin had been the person behind that. For those who had questions about his death, his family and Cradle Fund had answers. Both groups stated that Nazrin had gone to sleep after taking medication for a migraine, and that while he slept, the BlackBerry phone charging behind his bed had exploded. The autopsy carried out at Kuala Lumpur Hospital appeared to support this.
We out here using Blackberries in 2018? Question mark. I mean, that's like bad PR for BlackBerry to be told that your phone exploded, right, and killed somebody. Question mark. But are they going to make the implication that the medication is what caused him to not wake up? Right? Are we going to blame it on that, right? We're blaming it on the BlackBerry for causing the fire, and we're blaming the medication for him not waking up.
It concluded that his death was caused by complications from a blast and blunt penetrating injuries, consistent with a phone explosion. A tragic accident, case closed.
So they were actually able to make the phone explode.
Except, 10 days after Nazrin had been laid to rest, everything changed. On June 25th, a forensic report from the Fire and Rescue Department came back, and its findings didn't match the official story at all. The department found traces of petrol on Nazrin's body, on the bed frame, on the mattress, and on his phone. In light of these findings, the state's Fire and Rescue Department director said it was far too early to conclude that the phone had caused the fire.
How did they get petrol? How did they not know the petrol was there? Did not smell it? Like, after the burning, or what? And how did they already have the funeral before even finding out any of this that had happened?
Then, on August 6, 2018, the police made it official. The case was reclassified. Nazrin Hassan's death was no longer considered an accident.
Also, they're going to have to dig him up now?
It was murder. Rather than waiting for the authorities to act, Nazrin's siblings began pushing for answers themselves. His older brother, Dr. Malek Hassan, was the first to publicly question the autopsy results. Another brother, Dr. Abdulaziz Hassan, was a lawyer and helped coordinate the family's efforts. And their sister, Che Eleni Che Hassan, obtained the death certificate and compared it to the Fire and Rescue Department's findings. And things weren't adding up. She made a formal request to the court for the right to exhume Nazrin's body for a second autopsy. On October 1st, 2018, the magistrate's court granted police permission to do exactly that.
Okay, so they did exhume him, but the family actually wanted it to happen, so...
But Nazrin's widow, Samira, was opposed to this, and her lawyers challenged the decision.
I mean, we already thrown suspicion at her at the beginning, right? Because she was outside not doing anything. Question mark. Just letting it happen, or not helping, or not calling the police, or anything like that, and now she's trying to stop them from exhuming him. You could argue like, oh yeah, she doesn't want his body to be disturbed, but it's two acts of suspicion now on the wife.
But the High Court upheld the initial ruling. Nazrin's body was exhumed on October 8th and transported to the University of Malaya Medical Center for a second autopsy. And here they uncovered something that the first one had not. Nazrin had not died from an exploding phone. He had died from multiple blunt impacts to the head. On March 12, 2019, 4 people were formally charged with Nazrin's murder.
4 people? Not just one? And formally, did they actually do it or not? Question mark.
The first was his widow, Samira Muzaffar.
Of course, we already figured that.
The second and third were her 2 teenage sons from
the family too? Oh, previous marriage. Okay, so they wouldn't really care about this guy.
a previous marriage, then aged 17 and 14.
Oof.
And the fourth was Eka Wayu Lestari, an Indonesian domestic helper employed by the family.
Okay, so the maid, the mom, and children from a different dad are the ones who conspired to do this? Question mark. Allegedly, we don't know, right? We haven't gotten to that point. I guess it makes sense for the mom and the children, but like, what is the motive, right? Money? Like, you already married to him, right? You're already getting the money. I don't understand how we end up getting to this. Like, you're already married to the person, you already have technically access to the money, and yet you want to kill them to get full control of the money. And that's what I assume is why this happens, or anything like that happens where it is the money, or like the health insurance, I guess, is usually one of the things. But like, is that only when you don't have money? Because like, why would you do it if your husband has money? But then it's like both, right? You want all the money to yourself and the health insurance on top of that.
For some reason that has never been made clear, Echo was charged, but never actually arrested, so she was absent for all court proceedings. They were
The maid?
accused of killing Nazrin at his home, sometime between 11:30 p.m. on June 13th and 4 a.m. on June 14th. The charge was murder, but it was brought jointly against all of them. This meant the prosecution had to prove not only that they had murdered Nazrin, but that they had acted together with the shared intention to kill him.
Okay, so does that mean this is not going to go through because it's harder to prove that?
In Malaysia, murder carries a mandatory death sentence upon conviction.
Oof. And this 17 and 14-year-old,
though that doesn't apply to anyone who was a minor.
Okay, that's what I was going to say.
Teenagers were safe, but Samira's life was on the line.
Was
The trial began on September
on the
6,
line.
2019, before the High Court in Shah Alam. All three who appeared in court pleaded not guilty. The court
Of course.
Nazrin had been a prominent figure, and Samira was by no means unknown. She was a senior executive at the Malaysian Intellectual Property Corporation, and her father was Chandra Muzaffar, one of Malaysia's most prominent political scientists and human rights figures.
Political scientist? What is a political scientist?
Her father sat in the public gallery to support her. These were not people on the margins of society. They were educated, well-connected, and high-profile. Exactly the type of people to draw public attention. And the case itself was compelling. The prosecution wasn't just suggesting the fire had been set deliberately. They were saying Nazrin may have already been dead before the fire even started. Blood spatter found on the wall of the burned room matched Nazrin's DNA. A National Police forensic officer testified that the pattern was consistent with blunt force trauma, not a blast, and that it must have occurred before the fire, because the evidence of this was found beneath the soot. The prosecution argued that Nazrin had been struck in the head with something consistent with a hammer,
Sure.
that the fire had been set deliberately, in targeted areas to distort the evidence. But there was another forensic detail that raised even more questions.
We have more than just that?
A prosecution forensic witness testified that Nazrin had a penetrating wound track in his brain, measuring 6.8 centimeters deep. And
Is it like a gun? Because I feel like that's what I thought they meant by, hole in head would have been like a gunshot. Like, how did you get a gunshot off in the middle of this area without anyone knowing, right? If that's what we're trying to get to. So you shot him and blunt force trauma just to make sure, or blunt force and then the gunshot, and then you set him on fire. Like, hello? Why do you have to go through so much for this?
And 0.4 centimeters in diameter. So to put that in perspective, that's a wound track into the brain that's about the length of a dollar bill, through a channel half the width of a pencil. A separate penetrating wound was also found on the front of his neck.
Unless we're saying this is not, like, there's no bullet wounds, like maybe like an ice pick, as something similar to an ice pick is being stabbed in.
How had he suffered so many different injuries? Before the trial, investigators had looked into whether these wounds could have been caused by something other than a blunt weapon.
I mean, it could be three people together, right? One has a hammer, one has an ice pick, one has the liquid to set up on fire.
In September 2018, sources told local media that one of Samira's teenage sons had been brought in for questioning in connection with a neck injury. It suggested that the wound may have been
A
caused
dart?
by an arrow, and
An arrow.
boys were members of their school archery club.
Sure.
These details were never formally established in court. No findings were ever made linking any specific injury to a particular weapon or person. These remain allegations. But there were other things found at the scene that raised their own questions. When a forensic officer visited the house in September 2018, 3 months after the incident, he found 3 fragments in the compound consistent with arrow components. And inside the house, in a storeroom, he found a CCTV recorder. It hadn't been switched off. It had been completely disconnected from its wiring and removed from sight. So whatever happened in that house between 11:30 p.m. and 4 a.m. went undocumented.
Sure.
A firefighter also testified that on the morning of June 14th, the day Nazrin's body was discovered, he saw one of the teenagers leaving the house with a box. What was inside has never been discovered. But what could their motive have been? As the trial progressed, the
I mean, the motive is always just, you'd assume money, especially if this guy's like a wealthy CEO, but...
has never been discovered. But what could their motive have been? As the trial progressed, the prosecution called a series of witnesses to build a picture of the household. As a family unit, Samira and Nazrin had one son together, and both had children from previous marriages. From the outside, it looked like a stable, successful household.
Okay, where is his previous children and then their child together? Where are they at?
Nazrin's
Well, I guess the daughter, right? The daughter wanted to exhume, so the daughter together was probably him, or probably her.
personal assistant called this into question, testifying that Nazrin's work performance had declined after the marriage. A colleague described moments where Nazrin seemed unsettled after phone calls with his wife, and said he had spoken about her spending, and at times had mentioned considering a divorce. The marriage may not have been as happy as it once seemed.
Okay, so she found out about the divorce. He was going to divorce her, so she gets rid of him so she can keep all the money, plus the insurance.
There were also reports that Nazrin had received threatening phone calls.
I guess that would make sense. Like, I was trying to, picture, why would you throw that away just to try and get everything with a bonus? But I guess if the person's going to divorce you and you don't want to lose that money, you don't want to lose that lifestyle, question mark if there's lifestyle attached to it, someone who's quote-unquote evil might decide to be like, okay, I'm just going to off this person so I get all of their money and their insurance, I guess.
Which he later discovered had come from one of Samira's children. The court during a divorce. The marriage may not have been as happy as it once seemed. There were also reports that Nazrin had received threatening phone calls, which he later discovered had come from one of Samira's children.
Okay, so threatening calls from her child.
The court also heard that Nazrin's clothing had been deliberately damaged by that same child. The defense pushed back on the prosecution's portrayal of a fractured family. Nazrin's driver testified that family outings in the months before his death seemed completely normal, nothing out of the ordinary. In addition, text messages from Samira's phone in the days before the incident were later described by one of the judges as normal, intimate exchanges between a husband and wife. The prosecution's main problem was that their case rested entirely on circumstantial evidence.
Sure.
They argued that Samira and the two teenagers were the last people seen with Nazrin before his death, and Samira had entered Nazrin's room about 3 hours before the fire broke out. She was later seen standing on the porch as smoke rose from the house, making no attempt to call for help and showing no emotion. And they said the fire had been set deliberately, in specific areas to destroy evidence. The defense dismantled each piece individually. They pointed out that the chemistry department had found no traces of petrol on the walls,
but they did find it somewhere, though.
directly contradicting the fire and rescue department's findings.
Yeah, but what do you mean? The fire department said they found it. Like, what is going on with that? Like, why did they say there was nothing?
They also raised serious concerns about how the scene had been handled. Because the death was initially ruled an accident, the house had never been treated as a crime scene. It had been cleaned. People had continued living in it. The arrow fragments and the disconnected TV recorder weren't found until 3 months after Nazrin's death.
Okay, so that means if you didn't find any petrol, that's because it was cleaned.
The blood spatter wasn't discovered until 5 months after the incident. The defense argued that, given all of this, the reliability of the evidence collected from the site simply couldn't be guaranteed. And then there was Ekawahi Lestari, the family's domestic helper. She had been in the house on the night Nazrin died. She had been charged, and yet she had never been arrested. She wasn't hard to find. She was living in another city, working in a coffee shop, and yet she was never brought before the court to answer a single question about what she might have seen. On June 21st, 2022, the High Court acquitted all 3 defendants without requiring them to present a defense. By that point, the 2 teenagers were 20 and 17. The judges found that the prosecution had failed to present even the minimum evidence required to proceed with the trial. There was simply nothing to show that any of the accused had caused Nazrin's death. Outside the courtroom, Nazrin's brother, Dr. Abdulaziz Hassan, told reporters the family still had unanswered questions and hoped the prosecution would appeal. His sister, Chayaleni Hassan, was direct. The family wasn't trying to send anyone to the gallows. They just wanted the truth. The prosecution did appeal. They raised the additional question of the door to Nazrin's room being locked from the outside. However, they still didn't have enough. On February 8, 2024, the Court of Appeal dismissed the appeal. There was no proof of a common intention among the 3 accused. The petrol evidence was rejected outright, given its direct contradiction by the chemistry department. And the court noted, again, that another person charged with Nazrin's murder had been living openly within the country, and that nobody had ever gone to get her. The prosecution appealed one final time to the federal court, the highest court in Malaysia. On January 7th, 2026,
Okay, I mean, that was this year. Again, with a lot of these stories, the people just end up getting away with it, or not getting caught, or not knowing who did it, or... I mean, sometimes they do get caught and they get executed, right? But still, it's unfortunate that sometimes they just get away.
verdicts, the 3 judges unanimously dismissed the appeal. They too found the evidence to be insufficient. And so, Samira Muzaffar and her 2 sons are, in the eyes of the law, completely innocent.
I mean, they just get the money and they get to live happily ever after.
All 3 were acquitted at every level of Malaysia's court system. Ekawayu Lestari remains at large. Nobody has been convicted of Nasrin Hassan's murder. After the federal court's decision, Nasrin's brother, Dr. Malek Hassan, spoke to reporters. "Our feelings are mixed," he said. "My sister is deeply saddened because they were very close. She only wants to know what actually happened, not who is to blame. And we really don't know what happened. There were so many different findings from different sources that it's truly impossible to discern. A localized fire, traces of petrol, a foam explosion, blood spatter, blunt force trauma to the head, a deep injury to the brain, arrow fragments, a door locked from the outside, and a wife who decided, for whatever reason, not to call for help. All we know for sure is this: Nasrin Hassan went home on the last evening of Ramadan. There was a fire in his room, and by morning, his family was preparing for his burial. We can only hope that in the future his family members get the answers they need. That is all for today. Thank you for watching.
Maybe we could just assume that, they all did it, right? It makes sense that they had done it. Question mark. Though, the arrows, what if they had done it off-site? Right? I mean, it wouldn't make sense, but... I mean, there were arrows, right? So they're not like they're going to stab them into his head. So wouldn't they be shot at him? Question mark. Though I guess he could have been laying in the bed, like on his side or something. They walk in with a bow and arrow. They shoot the back of his head, right? It's not that far away, right? So I don't know if they would get like full penetration, right? Because they didn't go all the way through his head. It just went, like 6 inches or something? I don't remember how deep it was. Is that how long a dollar bill is? Like around 6 or so? Maybe 5? But yeah, I mean, it makes sense that they did it. It's unfortunate that the prosecutors, right, that's what they're called, just were slacking, right? They goofed, and now they get to get away with it. And if we're assuming this is because of money, because he was going to divorce her, and thus her and the 2 children from a different father were no longer going to have access to that money, they had to get rid of him, and the plan works, and now they get to live with all the money he's amassed, you assume, forever, right? They got away with it, and they got the money, so the bad guys win. It's just, unfortunately, that's just how it happens sometimes, right? I mean, that's life, right? Bad guys usually win, I mean, it's not always, right? Bad guys sometimes win in real life, and that's just how it is. So yeah, that's unfortunately is going to be it for today. So yeah, cuties, thanks for watching. Remember to buy my stickers, or think about becoming a member, subscribe if you haven't subscribed, so we can watch time and subscribers, and don't forget we have a third now as well, and shout out to the members, EmmyStarr, RaleyDrew, and alexgkiller 880. Yeah, cuties. Thanks for watching. Tune into the next episode. Like, subscribe, hype, and comment. You know the do. See ya.